The story of Flight 447. It has been called the Titanic of air disasters, a passenger aircraft so advanced that the chance of it falling out of the sky is unthinkable.
For years, the crash of Air France Flight 447 has remained one of aviation's darkest and most unsettling mysteries.
Oh God!
But now, a spine-chilling twist has come to light. A final transmission, long overlooked, has just been decoded. This isn't speculation. This is a real message from onboard the doomed flight, sent just moments before everything went silent. If this decoded transmission is to be believed, then everything we thought we knew about Flight 447 has been a lie until now. What exactly did they say before it was all over? Join us in this video as we reveal the details. The decoded last transmission of Flight 447. An Air France Airbus A330 was flying overnight from Rio de Janeiro to Paris, cruising smoothly at 35,000 feet over the Atlantic Ocean. Most people on board were asleep when suddenly the plane's autopilot turned off. The aircraft started tilting to the right. Alarms went off in the cockpit. The co-pilot, Pierre-Cédric Bonin, quickly said, "I have the controls." But just 4.5 minutes later, the plane crashed into the ocean, nose up, falling at over 10,000 feet per minute. All 228 people on board died. For nearly 2 years, no one knew what truly happened. The crash led to one big question. Who was really in control of the plane during those final moments? The aircraft was only 4 years old and had no major problems. On May 31, 2009, it took off with 216 passengers and 12 crew members, including 3 pilots. Captain Marc Dubois, age 58, had 11,000 hours of flight experience. Bonin, the co-pilot, was 32 and had around 3,000 hours. The third pilot, David Robert, was 37 and had more than 6,000 hours, with most of it on the A330. The flight took off late at 10:29 p.m. The crew would be flying during the night, when the human body is least alert. This is why long flights like this have extra pilots so that they can take turns resting. Their route passed through an area called the Intertropical Convergence Zone, where storms are common. Though there were clouds and storms ahead, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. At 1:35 a.m., the aircraft left Brazilian radar coverage and moved into oceanic airspace. They tried to connect to satellite tracking, but failed. Bonin saw weather on the radar and spoke about warmer air outside, which made climbing harder. The aircraft couldn't go higher to avoid turbulence. Around 1:45 a.m., the plane entered mild turbulence. Bonin turned on outside lights and mentioned the need to climb, but the air was too warm and thin. Captain Dubois decided to go rest and called Robert to take his seat. Bonin stayed as the pilot flying. However, the captain didn't clearly say who was in charge while he rested. Bonin seemed worried about the turbulence and brought it up multiple times. He explained the weather and satellite issues to Robert, then the captain left the cockpit. The plane approached the aero waypoint, cruising normally. At 2:06 a.m., Bonin told the cabin crew to expect more turbulence. 2 minutes later, Robert suggested a small turn to avoid clouds. They adjusted the radar and reduced speed slightly. A strong ozone smell was noticed, usually a sign of nearby thunderstorms. Ice crystals began hitting the plane. Then, at 2:10 a.m., the autopilot suddenly shut off. A stall warning alarm sounded. Bonin pulled the nose of the plane up sharply, which was not the right move. The speed readings dropped fast. Both pilots realized the speed indicators were unreliable. The plane switched to a mode that removed automatic protections. Now, the plane could be more easily flown into danger. The pitot tubes, which measure speed, were likely blocked by ice. This caused the computers to give false readings. Though the plane had 3 tubes for safety, they all failed at once. The aircraft was flying with its older model tubes, not the newer ones being installed on other planes. The pilots didn't fully understand what was happening. Airbus side sticks don't move together, so each pilot can't feel what the other is doing. If both pilots push or pull differently, their actions cancel each other out. This made things more confusing. Bonin kept pulling up. Robert told him to watch the speed. Bonin said he was lowering the nose, but he wasn't. Robert warned him again and tried to guide him calmly. After 46 seconds, Robert pressed the button to call the captain back. He asked, "Where is he?" and kept calling. The stall warning came back, this time non-stop. The airframe began shaking. In the cabin, a crew member used the interphone, sensing trouble. Robert told Bonin not to move the controls too much. Bonin thought more power would help, but his actions were actually making things worse. Experts believe new tech may have decoded Flight 447's final transmission, revealing pilot confusion and system failure in clearer detail. This small but crucial discovery could change everything we thought we knew about the crash. Once the wreckage was found, what did investigators uncover? And how did those findings reshape everything we thought we knew about the disaster? Stay tuned for more. The aftermath that changed air safety forever. After Air France Flight 447 went missing on June 1, 2009, the world watched in shock. Search crews were dispatched shortly after the jet vanished, but they discovered only bodies and a few floating pieces of wreckage. Neither the flight data recorders nor the major wreckage were located for a long time. The wreck was eventually found by search teams in 2011, about 4,000 meters below the surface. The flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder were among the black boxes they discovered inside the aircraft. Important information on what transpired in the final minutes of the flight was stored on these devices. The BEA, a French aviation safety body, was in charge of the inquiry. In 2012, the final report was released. According to the report, the main problem was caused by the pitot tubes, which measure airspeed. The BEA said the crash happened because the pilots didn't understand that the plane was stalling. They didn't react the right way to fix it. The report also pointed out that the pilots had not been properly trained to deal with this kind of situation, especially at high altitude and without autopilot. There were problems with the plane's systems as well. For example, the plane was missing a tool to show the angle of attack, which is the angle between the wings and the air, and is important in stall situations. It was also more challenging for investigators to see exactly what was happening because the cockpit lacked a video camera. The BA made several recommendations when the study was published to help stop similar events in the future. They believe that more training in flying and stall fixing should be given to pilots. They also suggest to add more tools to airplanes, like angle of attack cameras and cockpit video recorders. To make sure that there is enough leadership in the cockpit, they suggest changes to the way choices are made when the captain is not there. The way airlines and plane makers all over the world see safety has changed a lot as a result of this sad issue. It shows that regardless of all of the upgrades in machines, pilots still need great flying skills. Flight 447 became an example of how technology can be both good and bad. If pilots are not able to handle situations, to make sure that such a tragedy doesn't happen again, the aviation industry has made training, tools, and means of passing messages better, due to the lessons learned from this situation. Beyond the damage and black box data, what secret flaws in the plane's design and systems might have quietly set the stage for more damages? Let's delve deeper. Cracks in the sky and the design that failed them. As more parts slowly came together, experts began to take a better look at the plane itself. They weren't just thinking about the pilots or the weather. They started asking questions about how the plane was built, how it was put together, and how it worked. The Airbus A320 was supposed to be a strong and safe plane that airlines all over the world could trust. But there were things inside it that were kept away from passengers' eyes that turned out to be serious problems. Some alarms went off, automatic systems disconnected, and in the middle of all this, the pilots had to take control without knowing what was real and what was wrong. It was a very difficult situation. Some experts believe the design of the pitot tubes was flawed. They say that Airbus and the people in charge of flight safety should have changed these sensors earlier, especially since other pilots had reported problems with them before. But not enough was done. That mistake cut short 228 lives. The autopilot also disconnected when it lost the speed data, leaving the crew in full manual control during the storm, at night in the dark skies over the Atlantic. It was the worst time for a plane to lose its automatic systems. Some people think the design should have been smarter. Maybe the autopilot shouldn't have turned off so quickly. Maybe there should have been a better backup. Many pilots who later heard about the crash said the same thing. They said the situation the Flight 447 crew faced was extremely hard. Even experienced pilots might have struggled. It wasn't just a simple error. It was a chain of events, made worse by parts of the plane not working right. As investigators tested the simulations over and over, they wanted to understand every second of what happened in that cockpit. They watched how the plane reacted when the pitot tubes froze. They studied the pilot's choices. They listened to the last words. And with every test, one thing became clear. It wasn't just the weather. It wasn't just one mistake. It was a mix of design problems, confusing alarms, and human stress. Flight schools and airlines started using the crash as a learning tool. They recreated it in simulators and asked young pilots to try to survive it. Many couldn't. Even with training, the situation was nearly impossible to manage. The mix of darkness, panic, and failure in the systems was too much for most. While the technical side of the story was being explored, the emotional side never faded. Families of the victims were left with a giant hole in their hearts. Mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, all waited years for answers. Many of them felt forgotten as the investigation dragged on. Others were angry, blaming both the airline and Airbus for what they saw as preventable failures. For the pilots' families, the pain was even sharper. Some people tried to hold the crew responsible for the situation, saying they should have done more. But others backed them up, saying that the pilots were also victims that found themselves in a situation no one could have ever been ready for. In the end, Flight 447 became more than a crash. It became a lesson, a warning, and a sorrow that touched people all over the world. From the broken parts pulled out of the ocean to the tears shed in courtrooms and homes, every detail of what followed told a story of loss, of learning, and of trying to make sure it never happens again. Given Air France's long history in aviation, how many more tragic crashes and terrifying near misses have marked its legacy over the years? Let's find out. Air France tragedies and turbulence from 1996 to 2005. Air France, the owner of Flight 447, has a long history of crashes. On the 5th of September in the year 1996, something very serious happened while Air France Flight 437 was flying through the sky. The aircraft, a Boeing 747, was on its way from Johannesburg to Paris when it went through very strong turbulence. This sudden and powerful shaking in the sky caused injuries to 30 people who were on board at that time. One of those people, unfortunately, later passed away from the injuries they got during the flight. These injuries were caused by a screen that was used to show movies during the flight. It turned into a dangerous object during the turbulence, and the situation became very tragic for that passenger. Then, on the 20th of April in 1998, another very heartbreaking event took place. This time, it was Air France Flight 422, which was traveling from Bogotá's El Dorado Airport in Colombia to Quito, the capital of Ecuador. The aircraft being used was a Boeing 727, but it wasn't owned by Air France. It was wet leased from another airline known as TAME. This means Air France was using the aircraft from another company for this leg of the journey. Sadly, the plane crashed into a mountain not far from Bogotá. Everyone on board died in this terrible crash, 43 passengers and 10 crew members. Even though the plane was not officially part of the Air France fleet, the flight itself was the last leg of a trip that started in Paris. So, it still remained connected to Air France in that way. Then came the 25th of July in the year 2000, and this date is remembered for one of the most devastating air disasters involving Air France. Air France Flight 459, which was a chartered Concorde aircraft, was getting ready to fly from de Gaulle Airport in Paris to JFK Airport in New York. But just moments after taking off, the plane crashed into a hotel in Gonesse, a place close to the airport. Every single person on the aircraft, 109 people, lost their lives. Sadly, 4 people on the ground also died. After investigations were completed, it was discovered that the main reason for the crash was because one of the plane's main tires exploded. The explosion happened when the tire rolled over a piece of metal that had fallen off another plane, a DC-10 from Continental Airlines. That piece of metal was lying on the runway. When the tire burst, sharp pieces flew up and tore into one of the fuel tanks. Jet fuel started leaking, and a fire broke out, leading to a very quick and tragic loss of control. On the 2nd of August in 2005, another serious event took place involving Air France. This time it was Flight 358, an Airbus A340-300 with the registration FGLZQ. The flight was trying to land at Toronto Pearson International Airport in Canada during a thunderstorm. But things did not go as planned. The airplane did not stop where it was supposed to. It continued moving for 300 meters beyond the end of the runway. The aircraft finally stopped in a ravine near Ontario Highway 401. Miraculously, all 297 passengers and the 12 crew members survived, but the plane caught fire and was completely destroyed. After a full investigation, it was found that the pilots had not used full braking or engine thrust reversal right after the plane landed. They waited 12 seconds before doing so. Because of the heavy rain, the wet runway, and the wind pushing the plane forward, it didn't slow down in time. This is what caused the aircraft to overshoot the runway. After so many devastating incidents over the decades, could Air France truly claim to have learned from its past? Or were more alarming events still waiting to unfold? To learn more, keep watching. Emergencies averted, and lessons learned from 2015 to 2020. Later, on the 2nd of May in 2015, there was yet another scary moment. Air France Flight 953 was a Boeing 707-228R, flying from Malabo International Airport in Equatorial Guinea to Douala International Airport in Cameroon. The plane came dangerously close to crashing into Mount Cameroon, which is a huge and tall mountain. Thankfully, the aircraft did not hit the mountain, and all 37 people on board made it through without getting hurt. On the 25th of October in 2017, Air France Flight 125, which was a Boeing 777-300ER with the registration FGSQX, took off from Beijing and was on its way to Paris. However, not long after it got into the air, the pilot noticed a fire warning inside the plane. The situation was serious, and the pilot had to send out an emergency signal, code 7700, which means there's a major problem. The crew then flew the aircraft back to the airport in Beijing to make a safe emergency landing. Then, on the 11th of November in 2018, another problem came up. This time it was on Air France Flight 116, which was also a Boeing 777-300R with the registration FGSQC. The aircraft had taken off from Paris and was headed to Shanghai. But during the flight, there was a mechanical issue, and smoke began to fill the cabin. The plane had to be diverted to Irkutsk, a city in Russia. Air France then sent another aircraft, Flight 384V, using a different Boeing 777-300ER, registered as FGSQB, to pick up the stranded passengers. But once this second plane arrived in Irkutsk, it too was found to be unable to fly again because of something called hydraulic icing. So Air France sent a third plane, Flight 380V, to finish the journey. Finally, on the 14th of November, the passengers made it to Shanghai. Finally, on the 31st of December in 2020, Air France Flight 736 had to deal with a serious issue. This flight, operated by an Airbus A330-203, registered as FGZCJ, was flying from Brazzaville to Paris. While in the air, the crew discovered that there was a fuel leak coming from the first engine. The pilot had to declare a Mayday emergency, and the flight was diverted to N'Djamena Airport in Chad. Although the fuel leak was found and its location identified while the plane was still in the air, the crew made the decision to keep that engine running. This decision did not follow proper safety steps for such a situation. Thankfully, no one got hurt, and after repairs, the aircraft went back to its normal flight schedule by the 6th of January 2021. After years of painful silence and unanswered questions, could the start of a lawsuit finally bring justice to the victims of Air France's tragic history? Keep watching for more details when the lawsuit against Air France finally began. It took a very, very long time before any legal case was even started after the terrible crash of Air France Flight 447. This was the flight that went down in the ocean, killing all 228 people on board. Families waited year after year, hoping that someone would finally be held responsible. But for a long time, nothing really happened in the courts. There were investigations, there were reports, there were questions, but no court case. People kept asking, when would justice actually begin? Finally, after nearly 10 whole years had gone by, something changed. In the year 2019, French judges made a very important decision. After looking over everything very carefully for many years, they said that both Air France, which was the airline, and Airbus, the company that made the airplane, should go to trial. That means they would have to face charges in court. They were charged with involuntary manslaughter. That's a legal term that means people died because of carelessness or because something very important was not done to keep them safe, even if it wasn't done on purpose. This was a big moment. The families of those who died had been waiting a very long time for this to happen. From 2009, when the crash happened, all the way to 2019, that's a full 10 years of waiting. For many of the families, it felt like nothing was moving forward. It felt like time was just passing, and still there were no real answers. During all those years, many things were being looked into. The investigators were trying to understand what really caused the crash. Some people said it was the weather. Others said it was the pilots. There were also concerns about the airplane itself, whether the plane's design or some of its parts had problems. The families believed that both Air France and Airbus knew about some of the dangers before the crash even happened. For example, they believed both companies already knew that the speed sensors on the plane had issues, and yet they didn't act quickly enough to fix those problems or alert everyone flying those planes. After looking into all of that and going back and forth for many years, the judges finally said there was enough evidence to start a trial. That decision came in 2019, and with that, the long wait for a legal case, at least the beginning of one, was finally over. The families could finally hope that someone would be held responsible. It was not the end of the story, but it was the start of a legal process that many believed should have started much, much earlier. Even though no clear details about the final verdict have been made public yet, the very fact that a lawsuit was filed against Air France over Flight 447 suggests that there might be serious concerns about their actions. If there wasn't enough evidence or strong claims, the case likely wouldn't have moved forward at all. So the existence of a legal case hints that families and experts believed something went wrong, possibly bad enough to hold the airline accountable. While we don't know exactly how the court ruled, the silence leaves room to wonder just how much Air France might truly be responsible. What did fellow passengers really think about the way Air France handled things? And did one traveler's bold criticism speak for them all? Let's take a closer look. A long journey begins. From Colombo to Paris. On Air France, a traveler recently took a trip that started in Colombo, Sri Lanka, and ended in Frankfurt, Germany. Along the way, they had to change planes in Paris, France, at the very big and very busy Charles de Gaulle Airport. The whole trip involved 2 different flights. The first flight was a long one on an Air France Boeing 787-9 Dreamliner, and the second flight was a shorter one on a smaller plane run by HOP, which is a smaller airline that is owned by Air France. This smaller airline mostly handles short flights within Europe. The first flight, the one from Colombo to Paris, started with the plane already in the air before it came to pick up more passengers. The aircraft had flown from the Maldives and made a stop in Sri Lanka to pick up travelers before going on to France. This route doesn't run every day. In fact, it only happens about 4 times each week, especially in the winter season, which shows that while Air France keeps the route going, it isn't one of their busiest ones. The traveler sat in the back part of the airplane. At first, that might not sound great, but for this person, it was a very good thing. That's because seats in the back are sometimes not all sold, and when that happens, a passenger might get a whole row to themselves. In this case, the traveler got lucky and had an entire row with no one else sitting nearby, which made it easier to lie down and rest during the long 11-hour flight. But not everything was perfect. The plane, though it had good features like USB ports, power outlets, entertainment screens, and blankets with pillows, was described as dirty. The traveler said the cabin looked messy, and the surfaces didn't feel clean, which made the space feel uncomfortable, even though the seat itself was okay. Still, the entertainment system had a lot to offer, including movies and shows, so that helped pass the time. The food served on the plane was also mentioned. For the first meal, there were 2 choices: either chicken with rice or pasta. The cabin crew was described as friendly, helpful, and kind. They didn't wait to be asked and often came around to see if passengers needed anything, which was appreciated. Although the cabin crew might be nice, one fact remains that if Air France struggles to maintain basic cleanliness on its planes, it will raise a troubling question. If they overlook the small things, could they also be neglecting the bigger, more dangerous issues? This kind of carelessness might point to a pattern, one that could support the idea that their past crashes weren't just accidents, but the result of deeper negligence. As the passengers' criticism gained attention, what happened next? And did their experience reveal deeper issues within Air France's service? Keep watching to find out. A rushed layover and a smooth, short hop to Frankfurt. When the flight landed in Paris, the traveler only had about 1 hour to catch the next plane. It wasn't easy because they had to take a bus to get to the next terminal. and the ride was very crowded. The traveler said it felt like being on a packed subway train, with lots of people and little space. Still, even with the rush, they managed to make it to the gate for the second flight just in time. The second part of the trip was on hop, using a smaller Embraer 190 plane that was about 14 years old. The seats were arranged in a 2-and-2 layout, so 2 seats on each side of the aisle. There were no dividers or curtains between the business class and economy class, so it all looked like one big cabin. The plane had room for 72 people in economy and 28 in business class. Even though the flight was short, Hop surprised the traveler by offering free snacks and drinks, which not all airlines do on short flights in Europe. The flight attendants were amazing. They were very friendly, moved quickly, and didn't wait for people to ask for help. Their great attitude made the short flight feel more enjoyable than expected. Finally, the plane landed on time in Frankfurt. The passengers got off the plane using a remote stand, meaning they had to take a bus again. From there, the traveler went straight to the Hilton Garden Inn, which is located right inside the airport, making it easy and fast to get to the hotel. In the end, the passenger's experience allegedly appeared to be more than just mildly unpleasant. It was likely frustrating, uncomfortable, and emotionally draining. What should have been a normal flight turned into something that left a lasting negative impression. From the dirty conditions to every other thing, everything seemed to build up into a moment of real disappointment. The passenger probably felt helpless and ignored, as though their concerns didn't matter at all. It wasn't just about a messy seat or an unclean space. It was the feeling of being disrespected and let down by an airline they trusted to provide basic care. Do you think the crash of Flight 447 was due to negligence? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the next video shown on your screen to catch up on your favorite celebrity stories. See you there.